This video is brought to you by Patreon. By signing up on the Phat Pack Magic Patreon, you get early access to all content, as well as grab bags of valuable cards and amazing mats exclusive to patrons. You can help keep coverage for Paper Magic alive by showing your support on the Phat Pack Magic Patreon today. Hello everyone and welcome back to Phat Pack Magic. It's Game 1, Round 4, the finals, here at this Darkside FNM Pioneer event. And Kevin is playing Sultai Flash, and on the left is Andrew, and we saw him in the previous game playing that Golgari Midrange kind of deck with Seasons Past. And it looks like Kevin is going to be on the play. He says he's good to go and starts off with a shock land tapped. Now Andrew's deck is midrange, but against control decks, basically what they want to do is figure out a way to go through all their counter magic, go through all their spells, and try and land some kind of spell that will get them card advantage, and eventually land a threat that can take out whatever Kevin's got going on. Andrew starts off his turn with, looks like a Thoughtseize. And Kevin decides no, a Censor. And that's a feel bad right there because Andrew did not play his land for turn. And I guess that's going to teach him. Plays a Scryland and looks like he's going to put it to the bottom. But that's got to be rough. If only he had played a non-tap land first, then that Censor would have been not as powerful. But that's kind of what Censor does. It's attacks, and you know that Andrew's going to be playing around that for the rest of the match. Now Kevin is going to take 2 life from this shock land, and that usually means that if a control player is taking life off a shock land for the 3rd land, then usually means that there's counter magic in Andrew's future. But he's got to play through it. He can't give Kevin a lot of time and just, try and hold all his strats because that's all Kevin wants. So Andrew's going to fire off a Collective Brutality, saving 1 mana this time, but 1 is not enough because Supreme Will is going to come in and counter it unless he pays 3. Does Andrew have another follow-up? Does he have another Thoughtseize? It looks like he's got one in his hand, but he's going to wait a turn before firing it off. Kevin draws for turn, and oh man, this is not good. Kevin does not have a 4th land. He's drawn spells and, whatever else, but he needs to hit those land drops because down comes Vraska Golgari Queen, and that's going to soak up another Supreme Will. But Andrew is not perturbed. He knows he has a few more threats in hand, and Kevin stuck on 3 lands. And it looks like he's still stuck because it looks like he's about to pass the turn. And wow, missing 2 land drops on a control deck. Andrew's got to smell blood in the water here. Andrew plays his 5th land and passes. And end of turn, Kevin's got to fire off a Growth Spiral and still not hit a land. Oh man, you guys know that MTG Arena Shuffler, this is kind of like what that thing does in real life. This is the MTGA Shuffler IRL. Kevin, not a land and passing the turn. Wow, this is really rough. And Andrew finds his 6th land drop. Field of Ruin is going to crack one of Kevin's land. It's going to be a breeding pool. But maybe that's what Kevin's deck needed. A good shuffle. And maybe we'll get some lands pulled to the top there for Kevin. It's still going to be rough on Kevin, though, because he's still got to face down a bunch of Andrew's threats, and he hasn't even seen the Seasons Past. And that's a card you want to hold counter magic for. So end of turn, Kevin is going to dig through time and hopefully get a couple lands into his hand. Top 7. He selected 2. Well, possibly 2. There's 1. Well, no, there's both of them, and the rest are going to the bottom of the library. Now you gotta bet that Kevin took 2 lands. But here's a land drawn for a turn. The Drowned Catacomb, so he's not gonna take any life, but here's 4 mana and a Wilderness Reclamation. Now, that is going to be interesting because it's going to allow Kevin to start playing on his turn and on Andrew's turn. And a Field of Ruin looks like it's going to be busting up another land at end of Kevin's turn after the untap. And it's going to hit that Drowned Catacomb, keeping Kevin off of black mana. I guess Kevin wants the blue-green more, which makes sense because he has Frilled Mystic, and that is very color-intensive. It needs double blue and double green to go off. So Andrew is starting off his turn. 6 lands against 4 is pretty good, but that Wilderness Reclamation could make things really hairy for Andrew if he doesn't have a solution to it right now. And there's a Tireless Tracker. Kevin Tone taking a look at it. What does that do? When you play a land, you get a clue token, which allows you to draw cards? No, you don't get to draw cards. Frilled Mystic is going to come in, sweeping away that Tireless Tracker, and in itself is going to get blown out by that Grasp of Darkness. A 2-for-1 on Kevin's side, but Andrew is now popping off a Traverse the Uvenwald. Traverse the Uvenwald? Yeah. And he's got Delirium, I think, so he's going to be able to grab a creature or a land. He might just... Probably wants a really good creature because he's got a ton of lands in hand. And Tireless Tracker is a pretty good creature to grab because depending on if Kevin has removal in hand, that Tireless Tracker is going to get really bad. But Kevin doesn't need removal when he has the Scarab God. An oldie but a goodie, a flashback from the past of blue-black control and Grixis Scarab God deck. Man, and with the Wilderness Reclamation, he gets to untap all of his lands and hold up counter magic. So now Andrew's got to play through this Scarab God, which is going to be able to start exiling his own creatures and bringing them back as 4/4 zombies. But Kevin doesn't seem to want to give up that position of holding up counter magic because he doesn't know what Andrew could have in his hand. And those green-black removals, they can have like really interesting removal spells, especially against Scarab God, and he doesn't want to give up this advantageous position yet. So he comes crashing in for 5 damage, bringing Andrew down to 15. And I don't know, I think end of turn I would have been fine to bring back that Tireless Tracker onto my side of the field with the Scarab God, but Kevin's been playing this deck for a while, so he knows when to be careful. So he's floating 6 mana at his end of turn step and then untapping, and this is going to allow him to hold up counter magic and be able to steal a Tireless Tracker. A little bit more careful, but it might just be worth it to keep the Scarab God on the field and have counter magic because Scarab God can reanimate that Frilled Mystic as well and be able to counter a spell with it, not just the one in his hand. So now Andrew is in a really tight spot. He needs to be able to get rid of that Scarab God, but an Abrupt Decay, which can't be countered, is going to kill off his own Tireless Tracker. He can't afford to let Kevin get any more card advantage than he has, and unfortunately, what's really rough on Andrew is the fact that Kevin has 2 counter spells in hand. So Andrew trying to force out that Tireless Tracker is just going to mean a tracker on Kevin's side of the field. Andrew knows this. He sees that Frilled Mystic. He sees that Scarab God. He says, you ain't going to get me that way. And Kevin says, that's fine. That's okay. That's fine and dandy. I'll just beat on you for 5 damage every turn because Andrew just can't... It's going to be tough for Andrew to pull off a blocker here. Scarab God comes crashing in for 5, and it looks like a Hissing Quagmire is going to come up to try and block the Scarab God. And while Scarab God could just eat it and come back at the end step into Kevin's hand, Kevin says, no, this is a good place to use my Assassin's Trophy. And this is going to allow the Scarab God to get in there before blockers. Andrew have any tricks left? Nope, he's going to take the 5, go down to 10, and start his turn. And I think Kevin forgot to untap with that Wilderness Reclamation. And here's a Dark Petition, and Andrew has Spell Mastery, so that's going to add 3 black mana to his pool. But a Frilled Mystic is going to get in the way of that. And now, Andrew is going to be able to land that Tireless Tracker, getting him a clue token, and then another clue token for playing the Fabled Passage to fetch out a land. So Andrew's got 2 draws, but he's going to be facing down 8 power. And on top of that, Kevin could pull out some tricksy stuff with that Scarab God. So 2 mana is going to ultimate price the Tireless Tracker, and then he's going to reanimate it with the Scarab God trigger on the stack. So he's going to be able to drain 1 from Andrew and scry 1 at the top. Looks like he's going to put it to the bottom. And now he's got 8 damage. And it looks like Andrew is going to go down to 1. He's got 1 draw step left. And he needs to be able to take care of 3 threats. And not just that, he needs to be able to take out 3 threats and get through a counterspell. He needs 4 cards to be able to do this magic. Clue tokens start off drawing a card. It's a land. Another card. And nope, that is not enough to take out those 3 permanents and get through a counterspell. So Kevin is going to take the Game 1 win, and he leads 1-0. And we are going to skip ahead just a little bit to Game 2. And here we go, on to Game 2. And I have to say, that was an amazing comeback from Kevin, because stuck at 3 lands for 3 turns against a mid-range deck is usually the death sentence against control, but Kevin managed to pull it out, and I think in no small part due to that Wilderness Reclamation. Being able to allow him 2 turns worth of mana is pretty great for a control deck, and I can definitely see why Kevin has rushed to the top of these FNM events. So here we go. Andrew says he's good. Kevin taking a look at his opener. Looks like he's fine as well. And Andrew's starting off with a Fabled Passage. Kevin says, you know what, here's a tap land of my own. And it looks like it's a Woodland Cemetery, meaning that Kevin does not have a shock land to go with his suite of check lands. Having lands come into play tapped is pretty rough on a control deck, especially during these critical early turns. And Andrew starts off with a Duress, and that is really harsh. So Duress is going to pull out a Growth Spiral, and he has another one in there, but he also has Abrupt Decay. He's got a good amount of control lands. And Kevin is going to take a shock, going down to 18 to play out that Watery Grave. But Andrew's got all of his colors with 2 Fabled Passages. And, I mean, it's only 2 colors. So, I mean, it's not that hard. And here comes Nissa Vastwood Seer, and that's going to put another land into Andrew's hand. A little bit of card advantage there. It's not necessarily a strict draw, but it's a 1-for-1 if Kevin kills off that Nissa. And end of turn, Kevin's going to pop that Growth Spiral and put a Overgrown Tomb into play tapped, kind of equalizing his lands here. But now he's got the shock lands for his check lands, and he plays out a turn 4 land, finally getting on curve here. But Kevin also has a ton of removal to go around, and it looks like he's going to start off with an Abrupt Decay, killing off that Nissa. He doesn't want to allow her too much of a chance to get through and become that Planeswalker that really generates a lot of card advantage. Andrew dropping his land for the turn and passes back. That's interesting. I don't think he wants to play through some of Kevin's threats, but I don't think he wants to put out a creature that might be more valuable later. But here's a great spell, especially from the Golgari Midrange deck against control, and that's Sign in Blood, where his life total doesn't really matter much in these turns, but drawing 2 cards for 2 mana, that is what he wants to do. And that could be where he starts pulling ahead of the control deck, just being able to draw out more cards than Kevin, and eventually able to play out more threats than Kevin has answers to. Kevin's draw for the turn seems to be a Torrential Gearhulk. And I remember back in the day, I mean, not really back in the day because it doesn't feel that long ago, but being able to reanimate a Torrential Gearhulk with my Scarab God and casting Disallow or whatever counter spell I needed at the time, that was good times. And Kevin playing this deck just brings that back to me. I really love it. Torrential Gearhulk, it's a 5/6 with Flash too. So, I mean, it's a beater and it's card advantage. So Andrew is going to play out a little bit of Collective Brutality. And not escalated, but a Frilled Mystic doesn't want to let a card go that easy. And it comes in as a counter spell, but it's going to be a target for one of Andrew's removals, maybe? I mean, the thing is that Andrew wants to save all of his removal possible for that Scarab God. Just time walking Kevin would be worth it. So I don't think he wants to give it away to the Frilled Mystic. But it's going to come in there, dealing 3 damage to Andrew and bringing him down to 15. Kevin could just be able to stick it in this game, and if he gets a win, then he's 2-0. I mean, that's great for Kevin. But it looks like Andrew's got a ton of removal, so he might be willing to waste one of it on a Frilled Mystic. But no! He's going to use that Assassin's Trophy on the Lumbering Falls, killing off that manland and preventing it from just being free mana for Kevin, or a free attacker for Kevin. Especially if he gets out that Wilderness Reclamation, then that's going to be a really big problem. So Andrew goes to his turn. And another Fabled Passage. It's a shame he doesn't have a Tireless Tracker to go with it. But Kevin does have a couple pieces of removal that Andrew knows about. I mean, he's being nice and playing it out. However, Garrick, Cursed Huntsman, that is going to be something to contend with, because it just generates card advantage by killing off that Frilled Mystic, and drawing a card is pretty huge, but also those wolves can be pretty dangerous too. And Andrew's going to go for the immediate advantage of drawing a card and killing off that Frilled Mystic, and his card is pretty good. It's a Vraska's Contempt. And down comes Torrential Gearhulk. He can't let that Garrick get in too much, and he has to use a Gearhulk on a Growth Spiral. Drawing a card and putting a land into play does not seem too great here. So 5 damage coming in at Garrick, bringing him to the dead, and looks like he's just going to pass the turn back. He doesn't really need to play out any more threats. I mean, a Wilderness Reclamation would be great on Kevin's side of the field here, but it doesn't look like he's drawn it. But Kevin could really use those a good dig-through time. That'd be probably awesome here. And a Dark Petition is going to come out, and it looks like Andrew does have Spell Mastery, so he's going to be able to get 3 black mana to his pool. Question is, what does he plan to search out? He doesn't have to reveal the card. It's Dark Petition. It's any card. But Andrew has a Murderous Rider in hand, so that he might be like going for something more utility now that he feels like he has a chance. But Kevin could just be allowing the Dark Petition to go through and holding up a counter spell for whatever he's got planned afterwards. It looks like Andrew's gonna fire off a Murderous Rider. This is gonna kill off the Gear Hulk and deal 2 damage to Andrew. Unless Kevin's gonna use a counterspell. And he says, nope. Andrew lands at 13. But his life total doesn't really matter that much. And end of turn, Brazen Borrower just coming down on its own as a 3-1 flying beater. No card advantage here, fortunately. It's crashing in for 3 and brings Andrew down to 10. Now with those 2 removal spells, Andrew must feel like he's in an okay position here. Because it's an Abrupt Decay and an Ultimate Price in Kevin's hand. Is Andrew going to pump out another Planeswalker for 6 mana? There's 3. And it's a Hero's Downfall. He's going to use that on the Brazen Borrower. He says that if you haven't drawn the Scarab God yet, then I might be okay. But that's just one of the great things about Scarab God, is that all these creatures that are going to Kevin's yard can eventually come back and be a force to be reckoned with. A 4/4 flying creature is nothing to laugh at. But here's Andrew's signature spell of the game, and this could quickly deteriorate Kevin's position. Seasons Pass is going to allow Andrew a huge card advantage here, because lands count as 0, duress counts as 1. He could get Collective Brutality or Sign in Blood back, Hero's Downfall. There are so many things that can go back into Andrew's hand, and Kevin's like, maybe I should probably put in more counter magic, because wow, that's 6 cards that are going back into Andrew's hand after this huge turn. And one of them is going to be Nissa, and Nissa is going to flip. So Kevin, after seeing Andrew draw back all the threats that Kevin had to deal with, is now in dire straits here. But Andrew is not going to be greedy here. He's going to start off with a duress. And he wants to see what Kevin's got going on in his hand, because that could mean just a free turn against Kevin's deck, and that can be really bad. Kevin reveals another Abrupt Decay and a Frilled Mystic. Andrew won't be able to grab the Frilled Mystic, but he does hit the Ultimate Price. So now the question is, what to play into the Frilled Mystic? What does he want to get countered? Here's a Nissa, clearly baiting that Mystic. Kevin says, Nissa resolves, but with her ability on the stack, he's going to Abrupt Decay. Because, Andrew can't choose not to put the ability on the stack, and that's going to prevent him from insta-flipping Nissa. But he's still going to be able to search his library for a basic land and put it into his hand. But I guess he's out. Kevin draws for turn. Very not great situation here. He's got to deal with all this removal. He really needs to dig through time here, and another counter spell maybe, to be able to get through Andrew's hand. And he still has a Dark Petition to, grab anything he wants from his deck. Maybe another Season's Past. And here's Traverse the Uvenwald, and this is definitely going to be able to grab a creature this time. And it looks like it's going to be Carnage Tyrant. Guys, we are going back to Rivals of Ixalan and Amonkhet Standard Season, because Carnage Tyrant is here, and he was one of the biggest creatures that really dealt a lot of problems with the Scarab God. And that's kind of how you beat the Scarab God deck. You play Carnage Tyrant. It's really hard for them to interact with it, especially if you don't have a lot of creatures in your yard. Kevin draws for turn, and he says, I'm not down out yet. I'm going to stick through this. And he's got it, because there's some good money on the line here. Just under $100 for first place is going to be going to the winner of this game. And Carnage Tyrant comes in, bringing Kevin down to 11. That big, beefy, hex-proof, can't-be-countered trampling boy really making a hard problem for Kevin. And Kevin still has to deal with all these removal that Andrew has in hand, and the Garrick as well. So here comes a Wilderness Reclamation, kind of a last-ditch gambit. And Assassin's Trophy is going to blow that up, preventing Kevin from untapping. He's asking if the Wilderness Reclamation is worth a Frozen Mystic, and he says it is not. He needs to have counter magic up for that Garrick. Or that Dark Petition. I mean, Dark Petition could just grab a Seasons Past from Andrew's library after Kevin goes through this next bout of creatures and spells. Man, that Seasons Past really did a number on this game as Carnage Tyrant comes in, bringing Kevin down to 4 life. Kevin draws for turn. He needs a board wipe, he needs some kind of sacrifice effect, but even a sacrifice effect wouldn't be able to deal with it. Andrew could just use the Hissing Quagmire. Here's a last-ditch effort, a dig through time. But don't count Kevin out just yet. There's a few things that he could resolve and turn this game back around. Kevin very carefully choosing what he wants to bring back or exile with Dig Through Time. Definitely doesn't want to give up his Gear Hulk, and he definitely doesn't want to give up a spell to make that Gear Hulk work. And there's Scarab God, but Scarab God isn't enough to animate and will play out and make a blocker, because he's still going to take 2 trample damage, and then the Hissing Quagmire is still going to do 2 damage. And on top of that, Andrew could just fish out another removal spell to kill off the Scarab God. Or he could just have one in hand. Andrew has 6 cards in hand. Kevin going through his options here. The other thing you want to consider when you're playing a control deck is what information you want to give out. And Kevin could possibly not want to bring out one of his sideboard cards that, while it may put a hamper on Andrew's game plan, it might not be worth it because he's at 4 life right now. And so he doesn't want to give away information. It's all about being strategic with control decks. You have to really plan out your turns so many turns ahead. So Dig hits the yard, land for turn. He can't shock himself. It's too much. So here's Scarab God. Probably with, looks like ultimate price backup for that Hissing Quagmire. Andrew says, alright, end of turn. Vraska's Contempt? Yep, that'll do it. And game 2 is going to Andrew as he ties up the match. And we are going to skip ahead just a little bit and go on to game 3. Alright guys, it's game 3. Kevin and Andrew are both tied 1-1. So Kevin's going to be on the play for this game. And I think what he really wants to do is have a good hand of counter magic and probably not many of his bombs in his opener. He'd rather draw into them. I, as a control player, I like seeing no bombs in hand and just counter magic and card draw. That's what I want to see when I'm playing a control deck. It looks like Kevin's going to be on the play, and he's going to start off with a Hinterland Harbor before passing it back to Andrew. And Andrew's got the Brutal, the Sickness, the Thoughtseize on turn 1. And it does not look good for Kevin. His Scarab God, one of his win conditions, is immediately going to hit the graveyard, and all of his tricks are going to be on display for the next few turns. Kevin draws for turn. It looks like he's deciding on whether or not he wants to play that shock land and reveal that he had a land for turn. And I guess that's what you have to do. I mean, he needs to be able to have those lands coming into play untapped for a turn 3. Oh wow, another Thoughtseize, and that's going to hit the Frilled Mystic, but it's going to take Andrew down to 16. I don't think he's too worried about that. Just making Kevin mulligan every turn is not a bad place that you want to be. So Kevin's draw for the turn is another land, but he's going to play out that Wooded Cemetery, getting on color and on 3 lands, which means that his Supreme Will is going to be live. And I think Andrew knows that. So he's just going to pass the turn. And Kevin is going to use his Supreme Will to dig for the top 4, dig through the top 4 cards and pull one of them into his hand. And that's one of the things I really like about Supreme Will is how flexible it can be. It can be a mana leak or it can be a impulse. And it looks like he's taking a Dig Through Time, which is an awesome card to take with your Supreme Will. But he's also going to have Counter Magic up, and it looks like a very interesting piece of Counter Magic as well. One that exiles everything rather than outright counterspell, which means that it can hit that Carnage Tyrant. So Kevin now with 4 cards in hand, and a potential 2 more with Dig Through Time. However, Duress is going to hit Kevin, and that's just painful, but a Frilled Mystic is going to toss it away and leave him with a 3-2 on board. So it looks like Andrew says that's fine. He's going to take another 2 life and go for a Sign in Blood. And that's one of the spells that you really want to hit with those mid-range checks. Just being able to outdraw your opponent, especially in the control matchup. Kevin's got a 5th land, and he's going to put it into play untapped, taking 2 and going down to 18, and finally getting on the offensive with 3 damage from that Frilled Mystic, bringing Andrew down to 11. I don't think Andrew's very afraid of that Frilled Mystic at the moment, but if he doesn't deal with it soon, then Kevin just might be able to get through on the aggressive train. Kevin passing the turn, and it looks like Andrew passing the turn, and Kevin is going to go for a Dig Through Time, and that's a really important spell here. Being able to outdraw through those 2 Thoughtseizes means that Kevin can slowly get back into the game. While it's not as efficient as Sign in Blood, it is instant speed, and it looks through the top 7 cards. Also says doesn't draw, by the way, which if you're facing down a Narset can be pretty important. And Andrew says before my turn starts, before your turn starts, Kevin, still at the end step, and an Assassin's Trophy is going to kill off that Frilled Mystic, preventing it from dealing another 3 damage to Andrew. Andrew's got 4 cards in hand, same for Kevin. We haven't seen Kevin's draw step yet. In all honesty, trading a land for a 3-2 creature isn't the worst thing in the world, especially when Kevin's going to be able to start reanimating them with that Scarab God. Let's draw for turn. He's got an Assassin's Trophy in hand as well for anything Andrew might put out there. But it looks like he also has another Frilled Mystic. And a Scarab God. But that might be a little bit too risky to put out there right now. He knows that Andrew has Vraska's Contempt as seen from the previous game. So he probably wants to wait a little bit, maybe get a Wilderness Reclamation out there before he dumps the Scarab God into play. Here's 5 mana for a Dark Petition, and a Frilled Mystic is going to see that gone. He does not want to face another Seasons Past. Kevin's starting his turn, and he's got a good advantage here. Frilled Mystic plays in the same way that Mystic Snake used to a long time ago, acting as a beater and as a counterspell in one, providing 2 threats to the board. So here's 5, It's Scarab God time. Kevin is pressing lethal against Andrew, and Andrew needs to find a Vraska's Contempt. So here's a Fabled Passage. Brings the land in. Here's Dark Petition. Kevin says that resolves. Maybe? Yeah, it resolves. It's going to add 3 black mana to Andrew's mana pool. Andrew announces that he's grabbing Vraska's Contempt, and a clutch censor from Kevin is going to counter it. And that means that Kevin's follow-up turn is going to be lethal. Wow, who knew the game would end by a censor? One of the clutch spells that, normally you just play around it. However, in Andrew's case, he had no choice. Either Kevin had it or he didn't. And the match is going to go to Kevin because he had the censor. But that's going to be it for us this time on Phat Pack Magic. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscription button, tap that notification bell, and leave a like. Not just for me, but for my players too. And if you want more behind the scenes style footage, come check us out on Instagram. And if you like this content and you want to support us, come check us out on Patreon. We give out awesome stuff like Unstable Lands, signed by me, pieces of my vintage cube, and exclusive only to the Phat Pack Magic patrons are these exclusive Mox Jet playmats. And coming soon, foil playmats as well. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and may all your packs be fat.